The Independent Commission for the Location of Victims' Remains has initiated the first search for the remains of an undercover British captain, Robert Nairac, who was abducted and killed by the Irish Republican Army in 1977 in a small village in Northern Ireland. Robert Nairac was an officer with the Senior Infantry Regiment of the British Army who was on duty in Northern Ireland during the summer of 1977. Nairac was abducted from a pub at Drummondie in South Armagh, which he visited often as part of an undercover operation against the IRA.
Events in Armagh, the least typical part of Ulster in many ways, have made it specially important. South Armagh down here is almost wholly Roman Catholic, and the border area with the south down here has been a provisional IRA stronghold with ambushes, sectarian killings, ferocious gun battles across the border.
During investigations, suspects revealed that he was killed after abduction, but his body was never found. Nairac was one of the 17 people known as the Disappeared who were killed and secretly buried by the IRA during the 30-year-long conflict between Northern Ireland and the United Kingdom. The bloody sectarian conflict that battered Northern Ireland from 1968 up until the truce in 1998 is commonly referred to as the Troubles. The Troubles started in response to the partition of Ireland in 1921 between the Loyalists, or the Protestant Unionists, who wanted Ireland to merge with the United Kingdom, and the Republicans, or the Catholic Nationalists, who desired a united Ireland separate from Britain's influence. But the story does not begin in the 20th century. It starts here. This is Henry II, the first King of England to set foot on Irish soil in 1172. He has just landed at Waterford, the city at the southeast of Ireland, following a wave of Anglo-Norman settlements in the region. Henry is not on a royal vacation, but he is here to officially bring Ireland under English rule for the next 800 years. Ireland was the first English colony, and most of the colonial practices that Britain exported to the rest of the world later were invented right here. The Henry-backed Norman invasion of Ireland, however, did not completely alter the political clan-based structure practiced by the native Irish Gael population, partly because the settlers mixed in and married within the locals. Things began to change in the 17th century though, when British rulers began settling English and Scottish Protestants on the plantation farms in Ulster. The settlements not only displaced the native Irish Catholic population but sowed the seeds of ethno-political tensions that plagued Ireland for hundreds of years. The feudal system imported by the British completely eroded and forcibly dismantled the Gaelic political structure. The Irish land, labour, and resources funded British imperialism that swept the world in a matter of a century. Millions of acres of Irish land was confiscated and distributed among the English landlords. Large forces were launched to curb Gaelic rebellions that erupted periodically in Ulster. A bigger uprising of Catholic gentry against the foreign Protestants broke out in 1641, during which between 4,000 to 12,000 people died on both sides. In the centuries that followed, dozens of such wars, big and small, were fought against the English imperial machinery. All that brings us here. This cartoon is from the early 1900s. The man smoking the cigar is Henry Campbell Bannerman, the liberal statesman who served as the British Prime Minister from 1905 to 1908, during which he staunchly advocated for the Irish Home Rule. The movement demanding the self-government of Ireland was the biggest movement emerging out of Irish nationalism from 1870 to the end of the First World War. Home Rule bills could not, however, reach fruition due to the infighting between British parliamentarians, Ulster's Protestants' reluctance to be placed under Catholic rule, and the outbreak of World War I. Tensions came to a head when in 1916 the Easter Uprising erupted against the British refusal to implement Home Rule for Ireland. In just 3 years, the movement took a more radical turn, this time asking for the complete independence of Ireland from British rule. By 1919, the Irish Republican Army (IRA) came into existence as a militia trained to fight against British rule. By 1921, the IRA had begun to run out of ammunition, and the British Crown was not in a good financial position following World War I. In October 1921, the Anglo-Irish Treaty was signed, which established the Irish Free Republic, consisting of 26 counties, and Northern Ireland, consisting of 6 counties in Ulster, which remain part of the United Kingdom. The conflict over the ownership of these 6 counties led to the Troubles. Northern Ireland had a Catholic minority and a Protestant majority. Catholics in cities like Belfast and Derry faced discrimination at the hands of the Protestant led government. For instance, the British Crown Loyalists, led by the Ulster Unionist Party, put into effect policies to reduce the number of Catholic voters. The voting rights were tied to the property ownership. Since Catholics did not own much of their land, their best bet was to secure the right to vote by being allocated a council house. The municipal system, however, actively thwarted their access to council houses. In 1960, the Catholics made up 35% of the population but had only 6% of the council seats. The conflict heated up so much that walls were enacted across the region to separate Catholic and Protestant majority areas. The civil rights movements of the 1960s in Northern Ireland emerged out of these boiling tensions. The decade that followed saw increasing clashes between British loyalists and the Catholic Irish protesters. The violence culminated in what came to be known as Bloody Sunday in Irish history. After some 1,500 Catholic homes were burned down in Belfast by the Loyalists in August 1969, following 3 days of brutal infighting, British troops were called in to restore order. The troops initiated a widespread hounding of suspected Irish Republican Army members and sympathizers, which put many unarmed Catholics at risk of being imprisoned without trial. The Catholic nationalists were protesting against this policy in Delhi on January 30, 1972, when the British military opened direct fire on them. The tragedy killed some 13 people, while many more were injured. The events of Bloody Sunday set off a chain of violence that continued for another 26 years. The IRA only grew stronger, with more recruits joining the nationalist insurgency.
These auxiliaries had gone right through Ireland, burning and shooting and pillaging, and they had to be stopped.
Over the 3 decades, dozens of bombs went off in Belfast and Derry, while sectarian conflicts upended all semblance of normal life. Around 3,500 people were killed over 3 decades during clashes between British security forces, the IRA, and the paramilitary group of the Unionists, the Ulster Volunteer Force. More than half the people killed were civilians. After years of a brutal war that ravaged Northern Ireland, on April 10, 1998, a multi-party agreement was reached in Belfast. The agreement was known as the Good Friday Agreement, and it proposed a power-sharing formula between Ireland, Northern Ireland, and the United Kingdom. As per the agreement, Northern Ireland remains part of the United Kingdom, but a Northern Irish Assembly sits in Belfast now. The citizens can choose to retain either their Irish identity, adopt a British one, or have both. The Northern Ireland of today is nothing like the one during the Troubles. It is much more peaceful. Although sectarian divisions still persist in the region alongside bitter memories of the bloody conflict. The notorious peace walls that divided Catholic majority areas from their Protestant neighborhoods in the 70s stand tall in Belfast even today. The UK's exit from the European Union in 2020, known as Brexit, has added new challenges for Northern Ireland. As part of the EU, Northern Ireland enjoyed a lax border policy with the Irish Free State, with people and goods moving freely. But the UK's exit from the EU brought this to an end, since Northern Ireland is part of the UK. The policies and protocols to oversee post-Brexit trade started a rift in the Northern Ireland Assembly, which harked back to the days of the Trouble, leading to its dissolution for 2 years. At the moment, the Assembly is dominated by Irish nationalists. Leading analysts suggest that a united Ireland might be on the cards in the future.